Welcome, everyone. My name is Ben Finholt. I am the director of the Just Sentencing Project at the Wilson Center for Science and Justice at Duke University School of Law, which is so long I have to take a breath in the middle. I appreciate you all being here. I want to first thank the Durham County District Attorney's Office for partnering with us here at the Wilson Center and really being one of the drivers of this event and the event that's going on tomorrow night. Thank you, Madam DeBerry, and your staff. Thank you. So, I come to this work out of doing post-conviction remedies, where I try to take a look at people's sentences and get them back in the community, but an important part of that is understanding the process of reentry. Once you get people out of prison, they have to have a good reentry plan. And so we've got a wonderful group of folks here who are going to talk to you about their experiences with that process. So the first person I want to introduce, and I'd just like you all to raise your hand so they know who I'm talking about, is Brian Scott. Brian is the executive director of Our Journey Together, which is a nonprofit reentry organization. I got to know Brian through one of my Wilson Center colleagues and was immediately totally blown away by the work that he and Our Journey were doing. I also want to mention that the president of the board of Our Journey, Heidi Coleman, is here. Thank you for being here, Heidi. And when Brian got out of prison, he returned to Guilford County, which is an area rich with reentry resources, none of which Brian knew about, and none of which his post-release supervision officer knew about. So Brian was pretty much on his own for a while, and he banded together with other formerly incarcerated folks to start Our Journey. Every aspect of Our Journey is pretty much the brainchild of Brian and his fellows, including things like coding the website, which was not a thing that I was aware that a person could come out of prison and immediately pick up, unless you're the kind of guy that Brian is. So he now crisscrosses the state, making contacts with folks in local reentry councils, housing advocates, food banks, any of the kinds of folks who will support people when they are reentering communities. And we are so thankful that he and Heidi and Our Journey are filling gaps that perhaps our state ought to be providing on its own. Thank you, Brian. Other three folks up here are also formerly incarcerated folks. They will tell you more about themselves. I'm not going to get too deep into their stories. I will, because they are going to tell them. I will say, it has been one of the great blessings of my life to have represented two of these folks up here and to be getting to know the third. They are the kind of people exactly for whom I try to do the work that I try to do. They are working their tails off. They are dealing with the struggles of reentry, and they just make me absolutely proud to have been their lawyer. The first person up here is Randall Jenkins. The second is Scallarneize Holloman, and the third is Tyrone Baker. Tyrone even managed to get himself out of prison without having known me. I thank you all for being here. I look forward to hearing from you, and thanks.
Good to see everybody tonight. I want to thank the Wilson Center for Science and Justice. I want to thank the District Attorney Barry and her staff for organizing this event. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. You know, 10 or 15 years ago, we might not have had anything like this. The whole landscape has changed. And reentry is now a thing that we talk about, whereas before we did. And I'm glad that's the case. I'm glad that we now understand that true justice means making our communities whole and complete, and that it doesn't end in the courtroom or in prison, but that it continues when our citizens return and we can help them rebuild their lives. And then that makes our communities complete and safe. And so I'm excited to be part of this tonight. I'm going to allow each of our panelists to take a couple of minutes and introduce themselves, and then we'll ask some questions for them.
I'm Tyrone Baker. I feel like I'm a rapper. So, as was said before, I'm just, I did 14 years in prison. I got locked up when I was 19. I came home when I was 33. Oh, how do rappers do that? So, I came home with I came home in 2020. I'm actually the author of Context Perspective, Technology, and Rehabilitation. So, look, I wrote about the prison system and criminality in general, and I got published when I was incarcerated, along with the academic articles and academic journals. I just bought a house recently, about a year ago now. Right now, I'm on a really small truck company, just trying to scale up. So, yeah, that's me.
My name is Scallarneize Holloman. I've been out for about 4 months. I got out December 9, 2022.
I got out January 14, 21. Did 29 years, 2 months, 2 weeks, 9 hours. And I don't know why this is going to keep. I'm going to stick with time. She get used to it. But I think you guys will come out because when I got locked up, none of this existed. And Brian just asked me 3 years ago, did you think you would be here? No. So thank you.
So this is just going to be a conversation, and informal. I believe that you're going to have the opportunity to write some questions. So as you listen, if there's something that we don't explain or that you'd like to go further information about, we'll have the opportunity to ask you guys those at the end. There may be some times when we talk about some prison lingo, and if we do, and I feel like you guys need to be let in on what it means, we'll pause for a minute and explain it. By the way, I also recognize two people who mean the world to me. They were there for me during my time of incarceration. They were there for me when I was released, and they are here tonight. Lamont, you mind, Scott, did you just raise your hand? This is my word. Listen, I'm just going to start right here. You pass the mic around. What was the length of your original sentence, and how much time did you end up with?
So my original sentence was 28 years with minimum sentence of 22 years and 7 months, 271 months. I ended up doing 14 years and 2 days, I think, something like that. 14 and 3 days or something. So I received a sentence reduction. That's really a lot of significant things from people like my boss and really it was great. I was supposed to be released to March of 2029.
19, my sentence was 19 to 25 years. I did almost 12 years. And I thought it was an evil conceal. It's the physical contact and everything like that.
My original sentence was life. I did 29 years. And then got back there.
It's okay.
Ain't nothing he can't ask me to do. He wrote me. I didn't write it.
she can ask me to do. But first of all, I want to thank my family. For 29 years, they were there. Our friends that are sitting out there, they were there. So I want to thank them. Because the man today is because of him. Ben, thank you.
Ben is actually a hero inside of this as well. So I love him and so much. So let's go back to the last few days here at our shows. Hang back. So easy enough to be that far back, just 4 months ago. I want you to think as you waited for that moment when you were released, right? So maybe the last week you knew you were getting out. What were you most looking forward to? The second part of that is what were you most scared or nervous about? What were you most looking forward to? What were you most scared or nervous about?
Yeah, so I actually didn't know that I was going to be released. I didn't have too much advance notice. I probably didn't. Actually, I didn't know until Randall Jenkins said, I guess, you know, I didn't know for sure. You know, any given time in the court, you don't know how. So I knew I was going to court the day before I went. And so what I was most looking forward to was, it's going to sound weird, but I was really looking forward to the nighttime. You know, coming home and being able to go outside at nighttime, look at the stars. You know, like I like, you know, in prison, you know, it's very rare that you go outside at nighttime and just, you know, just be outside and just, you know, look around. You know, so I was really looking forward to that, spending time with family, of course. What was the second question?
What were you most scared or nervous?
Most nervous. I was most nervous about not understanding the way in which prison had affected me psychologically, and for those effects to manifest in a way that was harmful or destructive, like post-prison. You know, I was really thinking that there's no way you can. I got out as a kid. You know, I became a man in prison. You know, so there's no way you can do that amount of time in prison and then not affect you in some kind of way. You know, so I was really concerned that I would come home and a lot of these like prison things inside of me would come out in a way that would harm others, that would harm me. You know, that would just throw my journey off. So I was really nervous about that. You know, it's something I still struggle with. You know, the prison stuff ain't going away. You know, so it's still there. You know, so but that's probably tops it off. You know, and I was most nervous about like coming home and being a burden to my family too. You know, that was something I was really thinking about. Like, ain't no way my mom can take care of a grown man in this house. 30-something years old. But they held me down. They were, my mom and dad, they sitting out here, you know, so it's my road dog. So, yeah.
Most looking forward to and most scared or nervous about? Start with the most looking forward to.
I was most looking forward to going home. It was unbelievable because I wait, like everybody get out, and then I finally got ill and said that you know, that they was going to help me. Talking to some video on the phone. It took about 6 months. And then I remember I talked to him on Wednesday. He said he was going to get me out for Christmas. I was going home on Friday. And I told him I was going home. I couldn't believe it.
What were you most scared or nervous about? Trust me, everyone coming out of prison, I don't care how macho they might be, they're scared, they're nervous, and I certainly was that way as well. So we can understand the emotions, and it's hard 2 years out for me to even talk about some of these things. And here we are, she's just 4 months out, so all of this is fresh. So if you want to pass the mic, that's fine, we understand. Go
I
ahead.
was most scared of, like, because I've been here for almost 12 years, and I kind of got used to it. I was scared to go back into society and be around people. You know, and a lot of things has changed since I've gone. I'm scared of society. You know, I did have to. I'm still scared. And I still have some prison days that I'm trying to get rid of.
What I was most looking forward to. Just being with my family. And I got time to do 30 minutes, an hour, or a 15-minute phone call. That's what I was looking forward to, seeing my son. About 29 years when I got out, I was 30 years old. Yeah. What was I most afraid of? Would I be able to survive? Because I was institutionalized. That's all I knew. 29 years is all I knew. But like at 6 o'clock, go to bed at 10 o'clock. I still go to bed at 10 o'clock. I was institutionalized, still am. Been out 3 years. So, and like I said, I'm very time conscious. Still living. You had 15 minutes to get to the cafeteria. You had 30 minutes to eat, 15 minutes to eat. You got 20 minutes to go change clothes. So time is always, and I get here and everything is so black. You know, I'm like, no, that ain't what it is. But it is the way it is. I just got to get used to the way it is. And it's taking some time.
So it's almost impossible to describe what it feels like to wake up one day on a prison bunk and go to bed that same night on a real bed. You can't even comprehend those emotions. That entire day is a blur.
I didn't sleep.
And that's another thing. You don't want to sleep if you don't want to miss anything. So I want you guys to think back to that day. All right? You wake up in the prison bunk. You probably had at least one more countdown before you left. And then it was time to leave. Later on that night, you either lay down and don't go to sleep, or you lay down and do go to sleep. But what is the one thing that you remember the most about that day?
One thing I remember the most, like my first day, like I said, I didn't sleep, but one thought that I think is haunting me was like waking up back in prison. You know, like I was thinking, like, you know, this might just be an extremely realistic dream. So I don't know, it don't feel, but I think that was, I ain't gonna say it was consoling me, but it definitely was a thought that took a lot of those things in my mind. I was thinking like, okay, I'm laying in bed, so it's extremely comfortable. Like, I thought somebody get stabbed today. Now at the moment I was in bed, like it was just like a little short circuit, you know. So yeah, that probably was the most significant thought, you know, me fearing that it was real.
Well, I this happened and I said, well, it just happened so fast. I didn't know that I was going on so soon. You know, I got immediate release and I called to the case manager's office. She told me, I said, it's very good news. I better go home. She said, call your ride. Who's going to pick you up? I didn't think it was real, but it was real. And I kind of froze up, I started crying. And you know, they told me I got a year at least. I just didn't believe it until I got outside the gates, you know. I got to see the trees and just outside, but it was unbelievable. I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful
That's good. Pastor Brandon, can you tell us what you remember most about that first day?
Take the cell phones didn't exist when I locked up.
Getting in trouble.
Touching my cell phone. And I'm like,
Cell phones can't have it in prison.
so, and I went to Popeyes. I got a chance. I wanted to see what people were getting shot. So, just experiencing that air smell. And just the air smell. I felt different, but I didn't feel different. Like you said, I was just wondering was this real? Are they coming back and getting me and say we made a mistake? So that's what I remember about that day. Being afraid, but being excited at the same time.
So he mentioned his first meal, and I know if I don't ask it, somebody's going to ask it on one of the cards. So for the rest of us, just tell me what your first meal was.
Yeah, so my mom and my dad, they took me to I can't even think of the name. It's called what's it called? Home plate. Oh, yeah. My first meal, right?
They have time to cook.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was free food, you know, so it was amazing. I think everything that I like referred to in my brain, I referred to as free stuff. Like, this is a free world. It's free food. I mean, free world food. I mean, so it was home plate.
When he was your first meal.
We went to some place in Nashville. All right. Oh, our house. You see the place. I was over there. But I was so excited.
He's already shared it. Yeah, Popeyes. We were joking last week. We got together and we talked about there's a menu item that they serve in prison called lemon pepper chicken patty. It sounds a lot better than it actually is. We're glad that we don't have to have those. So being released from prison is just as much about the emotional and the mental struggle as it is the physical. You probably already picked this up. You kind of set yourself up in prison, you kind of set yourself up mentally and emotionally for people to reject you out here and to treat you differently. And everybody who's ever been incarcerated and released has a moment during their first 30 to 90 days when something happens that feels like a blow to the gut. Some setback that nobody else can understand. Maybe something that other people wouldn't even seem all that significant. Just to get your mind thinking. Mine was, I went to get my driver's license, which is one of the biggest ways that you begin to reclaim your autonomy. And they told me, as during COVID, they told me that they couldn't give me a driver's license, I would have to have a learner's permit. So, you know, I got a learner's permit, curfew, I'm basically 15 years old. You know, and it was a huge blow to me emotionally. And so I just wondered if you could share something like that with you that felt like it just blows to your soul.
I think that's an interesting question because I came home, I was extremely blessed. My situation was very much different than a lot of individuals in the home. I had both parents, solid middle class family, But I think the thing that's coming to mind right now is dating. So my nephew, they told me about like the apps, like the dating apps and stuff. Man, I've been going 14 years. I'm like, yes, I'm free man. Like, fill in the blank. So he told me about these apps. So like I was just like, I didn't know how any of it worked. So I remember sitting in my mom's kitchen and my nephew, his name was Joe. Joe was telling me like how to use the app. And I'm like, bro, why can't I just go talk to a chick and mom? Why do all this? You know what I mean? I was like, yes, So I feel like what was the real blow was the experience of rejection from someone that I was interested in solely because I was still with my mom. I mean, like everything was good, everything was great, the conversation was great, it was vibing. I was like, yeah, I still live on my mom. I think she asked how old I was. Like, I'm 33. And she was like, so you still live at home? She was like, yeah, there are extenuating circumstances. Like, I ain't a mom, but from that point, it was just not a complete and utter rejection. That was like, wow. That was my first time seeing the ways in which the stigma of this time can impact someone's life. So it was probably wasn't as like significant as yours. It messed with my life. Sit back.
Almost a month ago, I had a chance to work at a hotel. I've been working here about a month now. I got a promotion. Just being rejected.
I must say, I've been blessed, truly. Because I haven't had any major rejection or good blows. I was working a week and a half after I got out of prison. I stayed in that job. I offered another job. Better pay. Now I was at this place for 3 weeks, and somehow the CEO or the CV somebody found out that I had been locked up. So I could no longer work there. Cool. Went home to my wife, said, can't work anymore, she's still here. Found another job. So I haven't had that moment. And I thank God that I haven't had that moment. Because inside those fences, every day we live with that rejection. You can't change clothes. You can't change those pains. Those pains are good enough. You gotta deal with that. So that's how I live my life now. I don't let it bother. You say no, cool, be with you. I'm good. You ain't take my life. You won't let it bother me. Because you say no to somebody, gonna say yeah. Now, the company that I started with when I first got out called me, get your own truck, get your own crew, get your own money. I'm back. So I'm blessed. I haven't had that. And I'm you gotta roll with it. Because if you let it defeat you, what was your purpose? Can you let little stuff get you down? Because if you let little stuff get you down, what's going to happen when the big stuff comes? Deal with it.
One of the things that happens in my prison is you measure success differently than most people do. Small things are a big deal, whereas they wouldn't be with someone else. And I'm going to ask you guys to think about that, and I'm going to tell you mine, just to get you mine. When I did get my driver's license, it was probably 2 or 3 months before I felt confident enough, and this is going to sound weird, felt confident enough to go through a drive-thru at a fast food restaurant. I was scared to death that I would get up there, we would order, and there would be 117 different ways to order chicken. And I would get all overwhelmed by it. There would be 20 cars behind me, all of them at lunch hour, all of them. Or I would get to the window and wouldn't know how to pay because you used to just give me cash, and now you don't do that anymore. And if you do, they look at you weird. So I would just park. The first 2 or 3 months, I would just park, even when it was the go order, and go inside, take my time looking at the menu, and then order it and walk out. So when I was actually able to pull through a drive-thru, I felt like we need to party. You know, why aren't there balloons falling from the sky? So with that in mind, what was something that you guys experienced that was a success that everybody else would go, that's going to be what was it for you?
Yeah, so my success was internal. So it sounds weird when I think about it now, but when I came home and I went to my mom's house, I just felt like I didn't feel safe, but the reason I didn't feel safe was because I felt like the ceilings were too low. You know what I mean? Like, I was, because everywhere in prison, the ceilings are like taller than me, like 30 feet or something, you know? So when I got home, I was like, so, I just had an uneasy feeling, like, kind of just, like, it's probably why I went outside. So I think that my internal success was actually coming to grips with the fact that, that was just some prison stuff that was just still lingering. You know what I mean? And it took me a little while, maybe after a week or so, I was like, okay, but for some reason, noticing how low the ceilings were, I would sit down and I would look and I'm like, yeah, just laying down, it just didn't feel, quite like it just didn't feel, I just didn't feel safe. I don't even know how I made the transition from seeing a low ceiling to not feeling safe. I don't know how that process works, but that just didn't make me feel safe. So I think that success was getting comfortable with normal height ceilings.
If you can't do job, that's fine. Good job.
That's just,
So,
sorry. Going into one of these Walmarts and all that by myself, I was not through that thing. I went to a store and went down the aisle and I saw all these toothbrushes. I'm like, what in the world? We had 2 toothbrushes, soft and softer. That was it. I went around and I was able to pick up a toothbrush. That was my success.
congratulations.
Because first I went to Sam's Club, going down the aisle, too many people. They going too many different ways. Don't get behind me. Found myself standing in the corner. I don't know how I got that, that's where I was. So, being able to be around people, that's my success.
Reentry is focused on helping guys who have gotten out of prison and are trying to transition back into free society. But what I want y'all to understand is that everyone who helps guys transition, we're going up against a massive institution that wreaks havoc on us, like while we're inside. It's what, $80, $90 billion a year spent on the prison system. And all of the trauma and all of the, I guess, prisonisms that come from that, once we're released, we're left with reentry service providers trying to address that. I mean, I want the focus to be on making it so that when guys come home, they don't need reentry assistance. I want the focus to be on when guys come home, they come home as whole adults. Like, I went to prison for a lot of crime. So on paper, it looks like my problem is handling conflicts with physicality. That's what it looks like on paper. So when I get to prison, my case manager's like, we need to take carpentry, we need to take welding, we need to take electrical wiring. I'm like, oh. So when you're telling me that my potential problem is physicality, relying on physicality to solve conflicts, now you're telling me that the way I address this is by taking these classes where I'm taught that physicality is the way that I excel in life. I'm like, you're making my problem worse. Like, you think that you're helping, but you're making my problem worse, even with decision making. So many decisions are made for us in prison. Now, I went 14 years without being turned on the light switch. I mean, they turn on the lights for us, it tells us when to eat, all of these. So I'm like, I'm obviously a poor decision maker. So you put me in a place where all decisions are made for me, and then you release me, and you're like, oh, now you have decisions to make about housing, about transportation, about services, you got all these major life decisions. It's a decade and a half that I spent with somebody else making decisions for me. So now you expect me to be a supreme, outstanding decision maker like day one outside of prison? It's not logical. You know what I mean? I think that those types of issues should be addressed before guys get out. Guys should come home as whole individuals. You know, there's plenty of resources in prison that's being wasted right now. Those resources should be reallocated to give guys, you know, better decision-making skills. You know, and things like that. Identify what my real problem is and focus on that. And tailor it to who I am. There's no cookie cutter solution to transition. There's no cookie cutter solution to rehabilitation. You know, but yeah, that just came to mind. So,
Thank you. And we'll be passing the offering plate. It needs to be said over and over again. So thank you so much for it. That was great. What are we looking like on time?
6:55.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm just by show of hands, okay? I want to ask about specific needs and categories. And if you left prison with a need, and I know that there are different levels of entry, maybe some of these you already had. But if you had a need, for example, you weren't sure about transportation, and I don't mean you didn't have somebody who was driving where you need to go, but your own ability to get your driver's license and get a vehicle. If you had uncertainty about transportation, okay? If you had uncertainty about where you were going to live, okay? If you had uncertainty about the basic necessities, food and clothing, Since he likes to live wild. What about health care? You had any uncertainty about health care?
I do think that I probably should have been concerned about that. So that other things floating around in my brain.
Right.
That's probably something I should have been concerned about.
What about employment? You had uncertainty about employment?
That we should.
Okay. All right. So, can we just touch the iceberg? What about reconnecting with family? Were you concerned about reconnecting with family? Sure. Okay. That's a huge crisis for a lot of people. And it makes people scared sometimes. You haven't seen your child for 20-something years. Yes.
The only reason I say I raised my hand to that is because they knew me at 27. They didn't know me at 57. So that's why I raised my hand to that. Because who I was at 27, definitely not the same guy at 57. You know, a lot. I went through a lot. They weren't there to experience that. They thought they weren't. But came to visit and all, we talked on the phone, but to see me every day, all day, is a different story. You know, so I was concerned about that. Would not them acclimate to me, but me acclimate to them. Because I went to prison, so I got to acclimate to them. You know, because it wouldn't be fair of me to ask them to change their lives and the way they do things because of me. They'll be all right. Now, let me start by.
That was hard for Tyrone too, because he locked up at 19, so he was a teenager. So he come home at 33, I'm still treating him like a teenager. You know, I'm still trying to help him do this and help him do that, not realizing he's a grown man.
I think I had that conversation, which is why I felt like I needed some type of means of establishing a sense of self-worth. You know, a sense of like I am somebody, like I can do this, like I'm capable. I needed an avenue to establish those basic tenets, you know. So my parents like doing everything for me. I kind of was like, no, let me do it. I got it. Let me figure this out, you know. So I can get that sense of self-validation, you know.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You said it before I could.
So, one of the reasons we're here tonight is not just so that you can hear the amazing reentry stories of our family, but as a challenge to you, and as a challenge to this community, and as a challenge to society at large. So I'm going to ask our panelists, and you touched on it just a minute ago when you talked about what needs to be done previously. But since we are talking about reentry, each of you take a mic and tell our audience and the broader people who may see this on YouTube later on, what can the people in this audience do to help be a part of the solution for those that are returning, men and women that are returning from our prison facility?
So, for starters, how can I explain this? So I got a friend of mine, he's on remand analysis because he's, you know, not living the best lifestyle here. But he got out of prison, and there was an incident where it basically like he had work, I guess, already set up for him. He had potential job opportunity already set up for him. I think he went home to So in talking to someone that could help him get housing, like, you might not think a small town, but they gave him a potential place to stay, but it was on the other side of town from where his potential job was, and this city didn't have public transportation. We're talking about a guy who had been down for a while, so using Uber was not an option. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I go on so
When he said he'd been down for a while,
that's
a prison slang for been locked up for a while. So I didn't want you to think he was actually down on the floor.
So I think in situations like that, that to me, that serves as evidence that there are a lot of service providers who are somewhat disconnected from other service providers. You know, I think a solution to that, something that could be potentially implemented here in Durham, is there's an organization called Assimilate, I think, and they came up with an app. It's called Pocket. So on this app, the app is designed specifically for returning citizens. So on this app, it basically is a platform where you can pretty much do anything. You can check in with your PO, you can even your parole officer, you can even pay like your probation fees or whatever through the app. You can go through there and like, take pictures of job applications, and it's basically re-entry version of patient media exchange, which is where in healthcare you can get all of your healthcare information and then you can share it with whatever service provider you want to share it with. It's like the returning citizens version of that. You know, it's one app where you can, you know, people who are in housing, food, whatever, all of them can communicate with this one app. You set appointments, whether it's AA or whatever you need, you know, post-prison, like all of this is handled through this one app. You know, I'm like, okay, why is this app not available to everyone who's returning from prison so that you don't have one service provider who's giving you an apartment on this side of town and one who's helping you get a job on this side of town, but nobody talking about how you're going to get to and from. You know, like this app will eliminate stuff like that. You know, as far as like keeping up with probation fee, you can log your location in the app and show your PO like, yes, I was at this place at this this time, applying for this job, I didn't upload a picture of the application I filled out, blah, blah, blah. Like, all of that is taken like through this one. I think that encouraging service providers here in Durham to focus on reentry to adopt like more, I guess, contemporary, more modern means of assisting people will work in everybody's favor. I think that it's time for us to hack the process of reentry and act like that, for example, could be a start. As far as individuals, like what y'all can do, I think that individually it's very important that y'all know that, like, as a returning citizen, this applies to both men and women out here, the women that I talk to anyway. So a lot of us are struggling, like, internally. The one thing prison does is teach us how to hide. It teaches us how to deal with it internally. A lot of us are like dealing with some issues that we don't understand, we don't know how to effectively deal with them, but we're dealing with them. And I think that anybody who needs to return a citizen, like, keeping that in mind. There are silent struggles that can lead people down paths that we don't want to go there. And all it takes is a couple misunderstandings or unmet expectation or disappointment of some sort to lead people down paths that aren't up. So I think that just keeping in mind when you return citizens, like, regardless of how they're attempting to struggle, keep that in mind.
What are some ways that people in the audience, larger community, can be a part of the solution for the men and women as they return?
But those who take the time out of their life to be here to listen to us. Appreciate it. But I would say understanding, patience. I can't say put yourself in their shoes. Don't do that. Don't do that. You don't want to do that to yourself. Because that's a little trip we don't want to have. So, understanding and patience. And try to understand who this person is now, not who he was. Who is he now? And that's the problem with the Department of Corrections. They judge you by who you were. I know man has been locked up since 1976. 76. What can he do? Let the man go home. But he's being judged by who he was. So judge or don't judge. Just don't talk to him. You never know who you might be.
One thing that I think is important for us to remember is that setback does not mean failure. Okay? I had a meeting recently with someone who is involved with helping people overcome substance abuse. And she told me that it takes 9 relapses on average before a person regains sobriety. And unfortunately, we look at the first time they have a setback or the second time, and we say you're not serious about it. And that's not always the case. It's just hard. It's hard, and even the most determined person is going to have setbacks. But I hope that we'll all remember that that doesn't necessarily mean failure. Do we have time now for some questions from the audience?
Do you have any questions? Pass them out to the end here.
I want to iterate something. Be personal. I'm an open book. So if you want to ask a question, the only way you're going to know is I can. So any question, no question is off limits.
So if you so are you going to?
Does anybody have a question on a card that we can pick up? If not, we can just go ahead.
Or can you talk about PTSD?
Yeah, so PTSD is often associated with, like, for example, people in the military. But it applies to anyone, or it can apply to anyone who has suffered any traumatic experience, you know. And one thing I've noticed in returning citizens is, like, a lot of the criteria that you can diagnose with PTSD is met by returning citizens. You know, there are a lot of us who struggle with PTSD, but it either goes undiagnosed, or again, like being in prison, like they teach you how to hide certain things that's going on inside. Well, you ain't saying teach you, but that's just something that's taken to learn. Yeah, you gotta do it.
If you don't,
Exactly. You know, so it's kind of, I think that for all of the mental health workers who may see this, who may be hearing this, recognizing that PTSD is pretty much pervasive throughout this population, throughout this demographic. You know, you can't do 20 years, you know, 12 years, 29 years, 14 years. You can't do decades in prison and seeing the things that we've seen and it not cause some sort of trauma. Especially, like, he was a little young kid from the suburbs, you know what I mean? Like, going to prison and seeing that stuff, like, that's stuff you see in movies. You know what I mean? Like, why is this August? Where you get that football blade from? You know what I mean? Like, why you got this August? Why you got all the jokes and stuff? You know, you sit in a cell. I remember being 20 years old in my cell, hearing the sound of like something scraping, you know, overnight. I'm like, what is that? It wasn't until like later on that I realized like that was an individual that was sharpening his weapon on the floor in the cell. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, next time I heard that sound, I'm like, okay, something's gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like, it's little stuff like that that affects you. You know what I mean? So PTSD, I'm glad you brought it up because it's very much pervasive, like throughout this population. I wish that more returning citizens would get treated for PTSD and control. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, it's a stigma. It's kind of like, you know, you did a crime, so punishment, like, deal with it. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't think that's the most productive way to approach guys returning to prison to a community. You know? So, but I do want to say, before Mom just asked that question, I was going to say a little bit more about the previous question about what you all can do. I tend to be a little bit more radical when it comes to this, so I'm going to say it anyway. So I think that right now, there are decision makers in Raleigh who oversee the entire prison system. You know what I mean? It's probably a group of like 5 people, the commissioner, the secretary, it's probably a group of like 5 people who, when they say something, the entire reverberates throughout the entire prison system. I don't have access to them. Y'all don't. You know what I mean? If I go to one of these individuals, like, my name is Tyrone, I'm ex-con, blah, 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 immediately it's like, stiff arm, like the Isaac. You know what I mean? But y'all do. Y'all don't have that barrier. I mean, it would take very little for y'all who looks more impressive on paper than I do to go to one of these extremely powerful individuals and just think up like, hey, what are y'all doing to like really provide some rehabilitative services? Like, why y'all doing college courses in 1994? Why y'all can't bring that back? What's going on? Like, how about you implement this one particular program and like y'all can get these people here and you convince them things will change. But these extremely influential decision makers, they remain in their little bubble, isolated. I encourage y'all to pop that bubble. Like, go out to these people. I can't go out there. You know what I mean? They're not listening. I mean, which is weird because ain't nobody lived at 10 different prisons working at Raleigh. You know what I mean? Ain't nobody, I spent 14 years wearing underwear that was worn by at least a dozen of them. I never did. I couldn't buy that. Or they gave.
I bought myself and washed myself.
Alright, so we want to get some questions from our audience, and anybody that wants to answer these questions, there is a question here specifically for Randall, so we'll start with that. This individual is about hearing more about employment transition, and specifically Mr. Jenkins and Belly. Why was that transition smoother than most?
God. My sister threw me a welcome home party. A classmate came to the party. He said, "What you doing?" I said, "I'm welcome. I learned it in prison." He said, "Call such and such and such." My sister took me the next day. I had a job. God. So, that's my coworker right there. We're going to get it tomorrow. Because is a skill where, okay, you got a record, are you gonna come to work, can you do the job? My employee never said a word about my criminal record. Are you gonna come to work, can you do the job? So that's why I say God.
On that, I would like to say, but you took the initiative when the program was offered at your prison. So I think the prison needs to offer more programs for people who want to take
Oh, most
initiative to better themselves. That gave you the opportunity.
Most definitely,
Yeah.
because if you do time and you do nothing with your time, when your time is up, what are you going to do? Go back and do more time. So these programs are essential. Okay, I'm just going to say rehabilitation doesn't exist in prison. It doesn't exist. I'm sorry, but it doesn't.
No need.
Because they took away everything that a man could use or a woman could use to better themselves when they get outside the fence. Now the time is doing you, you're not doing the time. I did my time because I got an associate's degree, I got a welding degree, I was a teacher assistant in welding for 12 years. I worked in the canteen. I did my time. My time didn't do me. I took every self-help class they offered. Thinking for a Change, anger management, everything. I went to the SOAR program. I did everything I could to be a better individual. So when that day did come, I could be half the man that I am now.
And that's the important point. You know, I'm the executive director of a youth organization, and our ultimate goal is to work ourselves out of a job. You know, we would love to shut down in 10 years from now because the recidivism rate drops so that we aren't necessary anymore. Some people just need a little bit of help. We also know that there are some people who have reached that point in their life where they're ready for that help. And so you have to have that. You have to have that desire. You have to have that tenacity to want to persevere even when you do encounter setbacks. I'm actually going to answer this question. Are there changes within the system, prison or reentry, that organizations or people can advocate for that would have benefited your transition? One of the reasons we started our journey was because of the very thing that Ben spoke about earlier. There were many of us, including myself, that just were not giving any way of connecting with what was already going on in our county. There's a lot going on here in Durham. We have Ontario Turner, who's the Regional Council Coordinator for Durham County here, and I guarantee you that most people coming out of prison and returning to Durham don't know about the Regional Council, and that's a shame. That should never happen. In fact, I believe that your parole officer, if there is a Regional Council in your county, your parole officer should mandate that you have to go within 72 hours or something like that. And I'll get you a question in just a minute. And so, what I believe needs to happen more is there needs to be more done pre-release to prepare individuals for that day when they walk out of prison. There needs to be more ways that they can connect with the people in their county, not just the reentry council, but others, so that the services that they need start from the first day. For example, we had someone return not too long ago that is on 18 different medications. 18 different medications, including insulin. The prison is supposed to give you 30 days supply. They gave him a 1 day supply of insulin. And they didn't give him a needle, so he really didn't have a day supply. So, what would have been better is if we could back up 30 days before he was released and already connected him with NC Medicine or some other programs in this state that are providing these resources so that when they walk out, they're connected. So that's definitely one thing that I think that organizations can advocate more for. Let's not wait until they're released. Let's back up a little bit. Did you have a follow-up question on that?
I have a follow-up question, not to the panel, but to our
heard a number of like organizations that were in the room, and the question was asked, what could be done? You know, there's a lot of, and you mentioned there's a lot of services available in Durham County that no one knows about. Then I would ask the persons who chair or work with boards of these organizations, what are your efforts to coordinate those services of those folks that are being returned to citizenship? How is it done? At what point are you interacting and contacting those, reaching out to those folks? A lot of them are on parole, so you know where they are, because they have to check in with the PO. A lot of the, like Tyrone did, he didn't know he was coming home until the judge said you can go. But what are there in those cases? What are there outside that that person can, even if it's nothing but a booklet that has organizations, that somebody takes 15 minutes to say, these are some things that can help you moving forward? How do you then coordinate those services, and how does that become a matter of course as opposed to getting hits? So how do you all come together to collaborate, not just coordinate your services, but to truly collaborate and do that?
And let me begin answering that question, and I'm going to defer to Ontario, because that's something that our attorney is seeking to solve. I'm not going to go into, you go on our website, you guys can go through your grant cards, you can find out more about us, but we're partnering with prisons and reentry councils to provide first aid reentry kit that they will actually walk out of prison with, or that they get in there, or when they see their reentry council. And this has information about the organizations, the agencies in their communities that they can connect with for these services. Now, to your specific question about Durham, I would like to defer to Ontario. Ontario, would you please stand up, introduce yourself real quick, and take a stab at that?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Tyrone Baker. I'm the local reentry council coordinator here in Durham. To your question, with the local reentry council, our process works as this. We get a running list from the Department of Corrections of every individual who we release back to Durham, who either Durham is a county condition, they're released homeless back to Durham, or they have an investigation for a residence plan here in Durham. We receive that list 6 months out from the original release date. Once we get that list, within 60 to 90 days, we send our introductory letter out to that individual directly. We don't send it to the case manager because we know sometimes that letter could get lost. That letter could get lost in the shuffle per se when it comes to dealing with the case manager. So we send it directly to the individual. Introduce ourselves as an organization. Also, we give a brief list of some of the organizations that we're partnered with here in Durham, as well as their services. And sometimes, if an organization provides us with an announcement letter, we include that in our envelope mail that we send out to the individual. Once that individual receives that letter, it encourages them to take that letter and put it in the hands of your case manager and say, hey, I'm going back to Durham, I need to get connected with the resources and the local reentry council in Durham. Once that happens, we set up a pre-enrollment phone screen where we'll kind of do a pre-enrollment on the individual, say, hey, what resources will you be needing once you return to Durham? We don't want to just throw a bunch of resources at you at one time because we understand that can be kind of, like I said, overwhelming. Yes, it's meant to help you, but at the same time, it can be overwhelming when you're coming home and you have to go to this place, that place, that place, on top of meeting with your probation or parole officer. So with that, we'll sit down and say, okay, you know you're going to need medication. We'll make a referral to the FIT program with Samaritan Help. Once you come out, we'll set up your intake so that way you can get the supply of medication. The Welcome Home program is another one of our partners that we work closely with. Welcome Home provides up to 50 hours of peer support. So with that, they're very hands-on with the individual as they transition back into the community. They'll help them get their license, social security card, and of that nature, your identifiers. If you're not aware, your ID is like the key to success almost in certain aspects. Person can't get the job, they can't get other assistance from certain providers or certain resources in the community without that ID. So our goal is to get a person their ID as fast as possible. And that all starts from the pre-enrollment. We try to start that pre-enrollment by listing everything that was offered and say, hey, you need to get connected to this resource, okay, I'll make the call and I'll advocate on your behalf before you even come out of the prison. So, like they said, I believe that the reentry process has to start the day that a person, unfortunately, has to start their prison sentence. Like they said, we're building, starting later. We need to start late, so that way it's not an overall shock. Once that person gets released, they're prepared to come back into the community, connect with the resources, and also be prepared to be successful in the community, come back home. So here in Durham, we don't even work in silos. We hold local reentry council meetings every other month. We're constantly encouraging different organizations that may be coming to the community or organizations that are on the building phase to connect with us so we can learn what services you're providing so that way we can get our clients connected with you as fast as possible so that way we have a fair shot at successfully.
Yeah, and let me just piggyback on that too. So if you're here and you were part of an organization that in any way touches on reentry, even if that's not your main focus, but you touch on it, or you're an individual who wants to be involved in reentry, you need to see Ontario before you leave tonight and make sure that he has your information. And he will, the Reentry Council is not Ontario. The Reentry Council is made up of all of the organizations and individuals in Durham County who are focused on this issue and want to see the men and women returning to Durham County get their best chance at their best life. So I would encourage you to see Ontario. You have a follow-up on that?
Well, I just have a question.
Sure.
So first I want to say thank you to all of you for sharing your stories and being with us tonight. It's been really a good thing to hear from you in this way. I hate that we have to hear from you in this way, but we really appreciate you doing that. My question is, could you share some more terminology that we should use as persons that interact with you that will give you more support and comfort in having the interaction with us? Because as you all were talking, I heard you say things like reentry citizen, returning citizen, and formerly incarcerated, and terminology like that. So I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more about that so that I can be more supportive when I'm speaking with you all, letting you know that I'm an ally and that I'm here to support you and want to have a really positive interaction.
For the second time, I want to answer that if you guys will jump in. I will tell you what we hate the most is being called an offender. Are we agreeing on that? That's what the prison system calls the people who are incarcerated. And it switched. It didn't used to be that way. And I've had conversations with some wonderful people in the prison system who understand this. But when you call somebody an offender, you are identifying them by the worst thing they've ever done, and it's something in the past. It makes no sense if you want somebody to put that in the past, to label them by something in the past. So we can start there. Certainly, returning citizen, formerly incarcerated, you'll meet some people that don't have any problem being called ex-prisoner and use the word ex-con. So it's going to vary from person to person, but returning citizen is what we use, or formerly incarcerated. I don't know where we are on time. That's about it? Okay. We have a couple more questions that are very wonderful questions. So those of you that did not get your question asked, if you would like to see any of our panelists or me afterwards, we would love to talk to you more about. Someone asked about educational opportunities in prison. Someone also asked about why is reentry supported to communities beyond just the person coming home. Wonderful, wonderful question. I'm glad to talk to you guys about that. Here's someone who volunteers to answer that.
Yeah. And so,
All right, go ahead.
So, 90-something% of the individuals who are incarcerated will come home with it. You know, so the way I used to frame it to individuals was like, okay, let's pretend like everybody that's coming home is going to be your next door neighbor. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to be somebody's next door neighbor. Like, what kind of next door neighbor do you want? Do you want this hyper masculine, this super aggressive, you know, thoroughly prisonized individual who's been in gladiator school for the past 2 decades? Or do you want a whole individual who has some sense and who knows how to like live a civically upstanding life? You know what I mean? Just for that reason alone, there's some guys I met in prison, I don't want them living next door to me. You know what I mean? I was in there with them and I don't want to live next door to me. So I don't even want to see them in Walmart. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's important because the overall quality of the community depends on its individual members. You And I mean, if one of those individual members is messed up, and the community chain is only as strong as its weakest link. You know, so I think that to improve an entire community, whether you've been just involved or not, you should help those who are the weakest links. And I mean, those who have been disenfranchised and, of course, I guess, punished by imprisonment.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm going to take all three of these wonderful individuals with me as we do like Chris Ross to say, because they speak. Thank each one of you for being here. We were talking beforehand about how while we were incarcerated, it never occurred to us there were so many people out here who cared about these issues. We thought the world was against us, so that we made our family and close friends. So you guys, I can speak for all three of these panelists and tell you, thank you that you are truly our heroes.
I want to say again that this is, these are, sorry, which I'm supposed to go this way. These are, these folks have just decided to open themselves up to us, and I couldn't appreciate it more. You guys, thank you so much. The other thing I want to say is that, helping these folks get out of prison, as I did a couple times, would not have been possible without the incredibly great district attorney's office we have in Durham County. I'm generally natural enemies with prosecutors in the wild, but Mr. Barry, thank you so much, and Danny Spiegel, I want to say thank you for the hours and hours and hours you have put in to righting the scales of justice in Durham and in North Carolina. Thank you. Thank you both, and Madam District Attorney, the floor is yours.
Thank y'all for being here. I think Randall had his hand up twice. I want to give him the opportunity to say whatever it was he wanted to say, the last thing he wanted to say.
Yeah, I worked in my last job in prison was in the canteen, and I encountered a lot of guys getting ready to get out and stuff. And we were talking, I was like, okay, I know you're ready to go home. Everybody's ready to go home. Everybody's ready to go home day one. My question to you is, and I want you to think about it, are you prepared to go home? Now go think about that and tell me about it home. You come back and say, yeah, man, I took some classes. I said, okay, what class did you take? Did it do you any good? Or did you take it to get the game time? Think about what you're thinking about. Think about what you're thinking about. When you think about what you're thinking about, you have a different problem. That's it.
I want to thank all of y'all for coming out tonight. First, I want to say we have another event tomorrow. Tonight we heard about kind of like after prison. Tomorrow we have this event at Duke with the Modus Justice Theater. We're going to hear the stories of returning citizens, how they got to prison. It is a more kind of interactive theater type of event. I will be performing. Pastor Jay from St. Joseph's and Frank Statio. We are the three community members who will be performing and working with 3 returning citizens. So please pick this up, scan it, register. There's still seats available. Please bring people. Y'all can come along. That would be great. And also I want to thank the Wilson Center and Ben, our public defenders here, that person who stood up and asked you how you'd like to be referred to. That is a judge, Judge Mitchell. And so here in Durham, we are trying to do better. And that means that we understand, as Randall said, that at 27, he wasn't the same man that he was at 57. And as prosecutors, that's hard for us. Because what we're taught to do is to lock people up and then forget about them. Yeah. And what the people in Durham County have said is that we don't forget about anybody. And and that people can change. And it is up to us as a community to see that change, to acknowledge that change, to lift it, and make sure that their stories are heard. So thank you all very much. Thank you.